Hey everyone, today I'm going to take some time, or in this video I'm going to take some time to go over and do a little definitional work with both writing and rhetoric. And the goal of this lecture is to explore the connection and connections between writing and rhetoric. So you'll see that I'll do this a lot. I'll start with definitional work where I will define what something is, as it gives us a base to start with. So while you are probably familiar with writing and have been doing it for most of your scholastic career, I do want to expand some notions of what writing is and how it's more than just simply alphabetic text, that is, the words on the page. Essentially, writing is any attempt to communicate through written text, images, or symbols. It's the ability to transmit ideas from one person to another. You may have been taught that writing is just this one thing, that it's just this, but it's actually a lot more than that, and this class will actually encourage you to use visuals, to embed media, to use hyperlinks in the assignments that you submit for this course. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next video. Rhetoric is probably a term you're less familiar with. Probably the most famous example definition is Aristotle's definition. To see all available means of persuasion, rhetoric is focused on persuading or convincing audiences, and there are a lot of different ways to do that and to be effective in doing that. These are the available means of persuading audiences. Rhetoric is also focused on informing, persuading, and motivating audiences to do something. So whenever you compose something, whenever you write something, you're essentially trying to solve some kind of problem. You are trying to motivate someone to do something, persuade someone to do something, or convince someone to do something. It's a way of altering reality through the mediation of thought and action. This is kind of the idea that words have power that I'm sure that you've heard before, but words don't really have much power if they're not rhetorically thought out. They kind of fall flat and don't do much. So rhetoric is how you persuade and affect audiences through communicating your ideas in various modes. Okay, so some examples of writing and some specifics of rhetoric I think are important to go over. So some examples of writing that you may not consider writing: texting, like text messages. This is writing. Creating memes, which I'll go over in a little more detail in a moment. Alphabetic text, of course. Using images. Podcasts are writing using hyperlinks, considering design elements. These are also aspects of writing and things that you should consider writing. So let's think of creating memes, for an example, as a type of writing that is connected to rhetoric. Memes are very audience specific. There is a recent meme, I don't know if any of you saw, was it earlier this week? I think it was earlier this week. There were some protests, I believe it was in St. Louis, and there was this couple, you can see this dude in the background with like an AR-15 or something ridiculous, who came out of their mansion and started pointing guns at protesters. So this immediately became a meme. And this meme is directed toward a very specific audience, which I'll go over in a second. And it's also using all these different aspects of rhetoric. So audience awareness. So this meme and this dude, Shithead Steve, has like a specific group of followers. They're usually more left-leaning followers. Followers that kind of like satire, irony, and things like that. So when he posts this on his Instagram page, he's very aware of who the audience is that will react and respond to this. And there's a very clear exigency here, the need for this to be created. Basically, people are being assholes, and they someone wants to call them out, right? This is the need to create a text or a piece of writing. The context is where I think this gets really interesting and it gets really layered, because this very rhetorically focused meme is relying on older memes, which rely on a movie. I don't know if you've ever seen Captain Phillips, but this is like the I am the captain now thing that was a meme for a while and still pops up every once in a while. And here it's kind of being rehashed. There's also the I'm the manager now, which is playing off of all the Karen memes that have risen up recently. So there's a lot of layered context here, and you might think that this was not a well thought out, or someone just kind of did this randomly. And perhaps they did, but there's a set of rhetorical thinking practices at work here when the person is creating and writing this text. You can think about the purpose of this, inform audiences. The purpose is also to use satire to evaluate what those people are doing. The subject here would be the actual images and the words. There's some issues of design, right? Like, so if you think about how memes are traditionally designed, right? You have kind of bigger text. You don't have a lot of text. It's either like in the top or at the bottom. So this is designed in a specific way. And this very much is an example of writing that focuses on rhetorical aspects. You'll also probably notice that these are all part of the rhetorical situation, which is one of the analysis assignments that you have due on Tuesday. So this is kind of playing off some of that. You should also see some connection to reading Everything's an Argument. The first 24 pages of that go over a lot of these aspects. So basically what I want you to get out of this is that writing is more than just writing, and that rhetoric asks you to focus on specific aspects of writing that will connect to audiences in some way, shape, or form and make them more open to your ideas. Okay. So some of the ways that rhetoric and writing are connected is that rhetoric helps you to think through writing situations. When you sit down to think about, okay, who is my audience here? Before you begin to write, you will write a more audience-focused text. When you think about how to persuade those audiences, you will use methods. Some methods I'll go over in Module 2, like ethos, logos, pathos, and kairos, to affect those audiences. And it's specifically thinking about rhetoric asks you to account for your credibility or authority or lack thereof. You might feel as freshmen you don't have a lot of authority to make arguments about things or to put your ideas forth. That's not necessarily a bad thing if you just account for your lack of experience with something. Just noting something like that often helps to persuade audiences to listen to your ideas. Also, you already use rhetorical thinking all the time when you write. Think about responding to birthday wishes. If your grandmother sends you $50 for your birthday, are you going to call her to thank her, or are you going to send her a text message to thank her? Here you're in your rhetorical situation. Most likely you're going to call your grandmother and not text message her, just because of generational and technological divides, but also because you're thinking, okay, this person gave me money, I should call them. Also, they're my grandmother, I should call them. Also think about emails to your professors. You're going to be a bit more formal in those emails, especially if you're asking for something. So these are kind of thinking processes that you go through already. I just want you to become more highly aware of them and how the idea of rhetoric, persuading audiences and using effective methods to persuade audiences plays into your composing habits, especially for this course. So how is this going to help you as a writer? Thinking through these rhetorical concerns, as I've mentioned, will always help you write anything. Writing is a highly situated activity. So for example, what works in one situation might not work in another situation. So the things that you write for this class may be very different from what is expected of you in your biology class or your history class. The ways that you approach those those writing situations, and the ways that you are assessed on those writing situations. So you want to take the time to consider, okay, who am I writing to here, and what are they looking for? What is expected of me? And when you begin to think of writing like this as situational, as rhetorically embedded, it's easier to adapt to new writing situations. So when you come to a writing situation that you're new to, you have a method with which to sit down and think through before you just start writing out your ideas. So these are the main ways that rhetoric will help you in this course. And really will help you in all the writing you do in your academic and college career, and even beyond that. Okay, I hope this all makes sense. This Google Slides presentation is available on Canvas. I encourage you to look it over a little more in detail. And as always, email me with any questions, concerns, etc.